In the United States, this is Latin music. And this is Latin music. This is Latin music. And this is Latin music. Its roots are sometimes obvious, and sometimes not. It has accordions, and it doesn't. It's in Spanish, except when it's not. It's a fusion with jazz or reggae. New hybrids with country or rock. It's as diverse as the Latino experience, as American as it gets. Latin music, USA.
Funding for Latin Music USA is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. This project is also supported in part by an award from the National Endowment for the Arts and by Latino Public Broadcasting and by viewers like you. Thank you.
All the freeways were blocked like a science fiction movie. And people just abandoned their cars in the freeway. 550,000, you know, 500,000 or more strong. All I could see was an ocean of flesh and hair and teeth. The biggest door I ever walked through.
On August 16, 1969, a little-known band from San Francisco, Santana, performed at Woodstock. It became one of the most successful international debuts in popular music history.
And when I saw the movie, I remember that I was under the influence of LSD. You know, and then it all came back to me like, damn, why did I take LSD?
Santana's music was a fusion of rock, blues, and Afro-Cuban percussion, a fresh hybrid, but far from the first. In fact, the story of how Santana's sound came to be stretches back decades, to before these musicians and their audience were born. In 1930, a 19-year-old Cuban named Mario Bauza arrived in New York. A classically trained clarinetist, he had visited the city 4 years earlier and fallen in love with jazz. Now he was back, intent on making it in the burgeoning big band scene. In Cuba, prejudice against his dark skin had held him back. New York had race barriers as well, but in Havana, there was no Harlem.
Unless you know rhythm, unless you like music, unless you keep dancing, you can't live in Harlem.
All the big club with all those terrific shows was in Harlem then. Right at 3 o'clock in the morning was like at 12 o'clock in the day in Times Square.
In his own words, well, he found that it was a place where he could walk down the street and not experience the same kind of racism that he was experiencing in Havana at the time, that he could feel free as a black man walking down the street and not feel that oppression in the same way.
Just a few years later, after a switch to trumpet, Bauza was playing at the Savoy Ballroom for Harlem's King of Swing, Chick Webb. Bauza became the orchestra's musical director and lead trumpet player. Taken with Bauza's musicianship, Webb had personally rehearsed him in what he called the vocabulary of jazz, helping him adapt to the feel of swing.
Getting more da-da-ba-doo-ba-da-ba-doo-ba-da-ba-doo-ba-da-ba-doo-ba-da. Whereas Latin is, it tends to be strictly pa-kum, 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 pa-kum.
Even as Bauza made inroads into American jazz, Cuban music was entering the American mainstream. In 1931, an orchestra from Havana released El Manicero, the peanut vendor. It became a surprise smash hit. The million-seller launched the rumba dance craze of the 30s, and so-called Latin bands became a standard ballroom attraction. The stage was set for a musical revolution, led by Mario Bauza. It started with an insult.
Mario was insulted by some comments by a musician in the Cab Calloway Orchestra when he played him some of the music of Cuba. He said, hey, that sounds like hillbilly music, country music. He goes, yeah, it's the music of my country, Cuba. But one day there'll be a band, just like this band, the Cab Calloway Band, real classy, elegant, with modern harmonies, etc. He said, it's going to have an Afro-Cuban rhythm section. And I'm going to tell you, it's going to sound better than this band.
You ever hear the expression, merengue lemon pie? This is exactly what it is. Jazz in the top, and the Afro-Cuban rhythm in the bottom.
Bauza's first step was to recruit his brother-in-law, bringing him up from Cuba. To the world, he'd become known as Machito.
Machito, his real name was Francisco Raúl Gutiérrez Grillo de Ayala. His nickname when he was a kid was Macho, and then the story goes that a promoter in New York City told him, that sounds like too harsh. Is there any way to make that a little bit softer? Like, how would you say little Macho? So he goes, oh, Machito. So that's how basically he got his moniker.
He was the kind of man that was the salt of the earth, really, the salt of the earth. And what a pair of nobody could play maracas like him. And the way he sang was just completely endearing.
Bauza's fusion of an African-American big band with traditional Cuban rhythms was groundbreaking, right down to its name.
Just the fact that the name that they chose for that band was Machito and his Afro-Cubans says a lot.
Machito and his Afro-Cubano. A whole lot of people object that Afro scene there.
It's the first time where we see this kind of public acknowledgement through the naming of the band of something that is African-derived.
I'm of African descent. And the rhythm, the producing music we play is African.
Nobody was acknowledging Africa. All of a sudden, this band comes out, and right in your face, it says Machito and the Afro-Cubans.
Bauza and Machito had a strong base to work from. Granted U.S. citizenship in 1917, over 30,000 Puerto Ricans had migrated to New York, many settling in East Harlem, which came to be known as El Barrio, or Spanish Harlem. The mix of jazz and traditional rhythms spoke directly to this new generation of New York Latinos. They provided both an audience and musicians for the band.
I stood in front of that bandstand. It changed my whole life. It changed my whole life. Everything changed. I changed. You know, when I heard that band in person, in the flesh, and I heard those drummers and going how they started, and I just looking around, you know, I felt like that feeling you get in your nose when you're gonna cry or something, and you try to, it just destroyed me. Ah, damn! And I'm looking at, ooh, man, I look at the people, and people were dancing, vaya, vaya, papi. And I'm saying, hey, this is impossible. This is impossible, you know? Man, it changed my whole life. That was one of the experiences that stay with me till I'm in the tomb.
An immediate success in El Barrio, Machito and his Afro-Cubans became a bridge between worlds when they also found success with white audiences in Midtown Manhattan, becoming the house band at the La Conga Club for 3 years. Though the Afro-Cubans succeeded with varied audiences, that didn't mean everyone heard the music the same way.
It's almost like a double performance. Performing a piece that was translating to a general audience as a swinging, killing dance piece. But at the same time, there would be messages, coded messages for those people in the know.
Tanga, Buruboya.
A Buruboya. You know, it goes by so fast that you hardly recognize it. But anybody who was a practitioner of Santeria would look up, and because it's a traditional greeting.
During the 1940s, the Afro-Cubans developed what became a landmark composition and the band's theme song, Tanga.
There is a nice balance there. It's what Mario Bauza and Machito were really pushing for. Jazz improvisation over really, you know, intense Afro-Cuban grooves.
And you get this wall of sound happening with the horns. It's like a tidal wave of sound coming at you. It just stays on one chord, boom, and it just gets more intense and more intense and more intense and more intense. It was the harbinger of the experiments that Miles Davis would eventually start doing much, much later.
With music like Tanga, the Afro-Cubans quickly drew the attention of the most innovative jazz artists, including an old friend and bandmate of Mario Bauza's.
And who comes in at the very end? Dizzy Gillespie. The trumpets were here, saxes were there, the rhythm, he sit right there. You wanted to hear that thing coming right through. And so Mario, seeing that Dizzy's there, he said, all right, let's take out the heavy stuff. He can look around to Mario, hey, baby, knock me out, play some more of that stuff. And I know when Dizzy left that night, man, he didn't know where to put his brains in.
In the late 1940s, a handful of Cuban conga players arrived in New York and began transforming popular music almost immediately. One was Cándido Camero. Along with his peers, congueros like Mongo Santamaria and Armando Peraza, Cándido would introduce the U.S. to an entirely new level of conga mastery. The instrument itself would be at the heart of a new fusion in jazz, created by one of the Afro-Cubans' greatest fans, Dizzy Gillespie. As a founder of bebop, Gillespie had already revolutionized jazz. But he saw one aspect of it as stubbornly resistant to change.
In his autobiography, he said, you know, the rhythm of jazz was boring in the sense that it was ding, ding-a-ding, ding-a-ding for the most part.
With an upcoming concert with his big band at Carnegie Hall late in 1947, Gillespie asked Bauza to suggest someone to play, in Gillespie's words, one of those tom-toms. Bauza introduced him to Chano Pozo, who had recently arrived in New York from Cuba, where he was a successful songwriter, showman, and conga player. He had risen out of one of the roughest tenements in Havana.
Chano's a street dude, man. He'll cut you, he'll bitch slap you. Chano was so famous for getting into fights, etc. He had like a bullet lodged near his spine. They couldn't get the bullet out. You got this guy who's like pure street, but he's got all of this incredible folkloric knowledge and mystical knowledge and rhythmic knowledge.
At Carnegie Hall, Chano Pozo performed in a two-part number written to feature his playing, Cubana B, Cubana Bop.
Chano's appearance went over very big.
People went absolutely nuts.
So the band that did the most way out Afro-Cuban jazz was Dizzy's.
Afterward, Dizzy asked Chano to stay with the band. Not everyone was pleased.
Most of the musicians in the band, they were all African-American, did not want him in the band. Jungle music, we're beyond that.
Communication wasn't easy. Chano didn't speak English. No one in the band spoke Spanish. But a bridge between cultures was found in music when Chano approached Dizzy with a tune he'd made up, Manteca.
He say, Dixie, first, the bajo is the bass. He gave me the bass lick. I wrote that down. Bing boom bing boom. And then he say, after that goes, saxophone. Boom bing, boom bing. The trombone, boom, boom bing 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 boom. And the trumpets, ah! And all these were going at the same time. And it sure sounded good to me.
Manteca is probably one of the most, distinctive tune. Really, it identify what is Afro-Cuban jazz all about.
Dizzy wasn't the first one to create what we call Afro-Cuban jazz or Latin jazz. That title goes to the Machito Afro-Cubans. But Jizzy was the first person to champion it outside of the realm of the close-knit society of those musicians that were from the culture.
Unfortunately, 1 year later, somebody killed Chano in a bar in Harlem. But he left such a great impression on Dizzy. Dizzy never stopped to talk about Chano.
In the early 1950s, the mambo burst onto the international stage with hit records by Damaso Pérez Prado, a Cuban working in Mexico City. Despite Pérez Prado's popularity, he didn't invent the mambo. Musicologists still debate who did. But the first piece to be called a mambo was written in the late 1930s in Cuba by the pianist Orestes Lopez and his brother bassist Israel Lopez, better known as Cachao. They were searching for a way to liven up a Cuban form of ballroom dancing called danzón.
El mambo surge porque quisimos hacer, le dimos un viraje casi se fue de 180 grados a la nave. Sí, porque queríamos hacer algo que no fuera la rutina de siempre. Entonces usamos la síncopa. Totalmente sincopado. Pam, 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 pam.
The intriguing Lopez mambo was picked up by other Cuban composers and arrangers, including one who traveled to New York and worked with Mario Balsá and Machito in the early 1940s.
I heard it from Mario. He said, hey, mira, tienen algo nuevo de Cuba, se llama mambo. Hay que tocarlo así. You know, that means there's something new from Cuba. It's coming up, it's coming into New York, and you play it this way, and they got a new dance for it, you know, and the saxes, you know, that's when you heard figures like, they never had those figures before.
So while most of the U.S. and the world saw Pérez Prado as the king of the mambo, New York, with its jazzier sounds and decades-old Latin music scene, had its own royalty, known as the Big Three. Machito and his Afro-Cubans were the elder statesmen. The two other contenders had grown up in El Barrio. Tito Rodriguez was born in Puerto Rico and moved to New York as a young boy. By the 1950s, the suave singer led his own band. While his hot numbers burned, Rodriguez was also known for his romantic boleros.
Tito Rodriguez was a crooner. He used to dance with the women and take his microphone and just look into their eyes and just sing these beautiful ballads, and the girls would just melt on the floor.
But there was another Tito, too. Tito Puente was born in El Barrio, just 3 years after his parents arrived from Puerto Rico. Always interested in music, as a teenager he turned away from that of his parents. For Puente, nothing beats swing. At 14, he saw drummer Gene Krupa at the Paramount Theater. I knew right there what I wanted, to be Gene Krupa, he later said. But Puente found immediate work in the local Latin bands and took up the timbales. He soon found himself under the wing of Mario Balsa.
He was one of my mentors, taught me a lot about playing, performing, rehearsing bands, because I worked with Machito for quite a few years. Then the war came around and I was drafted.
A bugler and gunner's mate in the Navy, Puente saw combat in World War II. He also played saxophone in bands to entertain the crews. By the end of the 1940s, Puente was running his own band and revolutionizing the role of the timbales.
He starts making the instrument a vibrant force in the orchestra. Very much like Gene Krupa. Before Gene Krupa, drummers were not featured artists or anything like that. All of a sudden, Gene Krupa comes out and he's like a featured soloist. Tito does the same thing.
Puente was just getting started. His career as a consummate musician, band leader, and arranger lasted over 50 years.
As Mario Balsa said many, many times, nobody has done more for Afro-Cuban music than Tito Puente. Nobody.
The Big Three battled nightly for supremacy in New York before legions of new fans.
We were called Mambo Nicks, with the N-I-C-K-S on the end. And we were like guys that liked the mambo and liked to dance. And really, the only place to go was the Palladium.
In Midtown Manhattan, the Palladium had once been a dance studio. Now, it was the home of the mambo.
First time I was at the Palladium, I would say is one of the highlights of my life. I was just a teenager, and I was out to dinner with my parents, and they took me to the Palladium. And we sat down, and my mother was wearing a mink coat and jewelry. And here was this mixture of people, every race, every color, every creed, all dancing together. The MC came out and said, and here they are, the couple you've been waiting for, Cuban Pete and Millie. And the audience went crazy, absolutely crazy. They came out and they did this wild mambo. And you have to remember that he was tan, café con leche. And she was white. And in 1955, to have a mixed couple dance on a stage, any stage, had never been done before. And he took her in one of the steps and he put her between his legs. And my mother went, oh my God. It was like watching liquid velvet.
Going dancing at the Palladium was it. That was Madison Square Garden, you know. We went there to dress up and to show off and to dance.
What the music did was bring together a wide array of cultures. Jews, Italians, African Americans, different Latino cultures. And the dance floor served as the meeting point that enabled people to coexist peacefully.
It was the beginning of integration, true integration in New York City.
The cosmopolitan scene of the Palladium struck a chord with many young Jews in New York, including some who would play key roles in popular music in the coming years. Wolfgang Grayonka had been born in Berlin and come to the United States an orphan, his mother killed in the Holocaust. At the Palladium, using the Americanized name Bill Graham, the future rock impresario would develop a lifelong passion for Latin music and dance, even once winning the ballroom's amateur dance contest. He later said, "Why should I ever want to be president of the United States? I've accomplished something better."
I have no idea. I wouldn't want to speculate on why Jewish people love Latin music or Chinese food, but it's just kind of the way it is.
I think what Bill Graham and a lot of other people of his generation heard or got from the Latin music thing, I think it was sex. Sexual freedom had not yet come to America, and most people who were young were not having sex, okay? So when you danced with somebody, wow.
Expatriate Jewish immigrants in the United States had nothing to dance to. You turn on the radio of the 40s and 50s, and it just couldn't be more alien to the experience they had come from.
How much is that doggy in the window? The one with the waggly tail.
Gentile music. But the Latin music, that wasn't Gentile music. That was soul music, and I think that they could really relate to it.
The ongoing fusion of jazz and Latin music found a comfortable home at the Palladium as well. Located near the New York jazz clubs, the ballroom attracted the leading players of the day. Soon, movie stars began making the scene. The Palladium had become a hipster's paradise.
But the Palladium had one rule. They didn't care what color you were, they didn't care how old you were, they didn't care how fat you were, but you had to be able to dance.
The best of the Palladium dancers developed professional careers. Millie Donay, an Italian-American, and Pedro "Cuban Pete" Aguilar, a New York Puerto Rican, set the standard. Cuban Pete's mambo evolved over time, shaped by friendships with the musicians and invented in collaboration with Donay. She died in 2007.
She taught me a whole life. I used to flirt with her on the floor, and they came out to be steps. I tripped once and fell. You know what Millie said to me? "Do it again. That was great. Do it again." I said, "Okay." She was the best, really. She was the best.
Another team used the Palladium as a stepping stone to a career that lasted decades. Agustin "Augie" Rodriguez at first only watched.
I used to study dances. Cuban Pete was the best. And I did 6 months of just looking and trying to study that, but I felt it, but...
He also kept an eye on a young Puerto Rican from East Harlem, Margot Bartolome.
I used to try to be the first guy to go there. 20 guys were on her already, and she danced with them. She looked great, great tits.
They finally met after Margot's sister approached her to enter a dance contest with Augie.
And we went in and we won the contest. First time we ever danced together. Of course, we weren't professional, we weren't trained, but we had it.
Bitten by the dance bug, they applied to schools on scholarship, which soon transformed their mambo.
We went to school, dance school, and whatever we learned that day, we used to come in and put it into the mambo.
Ballet.
Unknowingly, we were creating a style.
Pam, pim, 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 pim. 1, 2, 3.
And we were the first ones really to put in turn, slides, and tricks into the mambo. I used to spin.
Ooh, she'd go down to the floor.
We always had to end with that.
Augie and Margot weren't the only ones riding the Latin dance wave of the 50s to success. Broadway and Hollywood turned mambo and escalating ethnic tensions into the hit West Side Story. Post-war New York now held over 500,000 Puerto Ricans, many newly arrived.
I'll get a terrace apartment.
The musical transformed their hopes and struggles into song.
Life can be bright in America.
If you can fight in America.
Life is all right in America.
If you're all white in America.
Others sought to repackage the craze for Main Street USA.
Even the records say, what the heck is the mambo? And we know from your letters that you would like to learn the mambo if it didn't take too long and you could do it at home. Well, my husband says that he can teach you the foundation step of the dance in less than a minute. So here is your teacher, Arthur Murray.
As the mambo began to fade, Perez Prado came through with another #1 hit, Cherry Pink and Apple Blossom White. For many, it was the introduction to the new, easier Cuban dance, the cha-cha-cha.
The cha-cha-cha was really popular, especially with younger audiences, because it was at a slower tempo. So it was easier to dance to.
The cha-cha, if you think about the dance stuff, is actually the idiot's dance, because it's easiest to learn.
Ooh, we're gonna do the cha-cha. And the people, you know, that's what they're selling.
The cha-cha was easier.
Cha-cha was easy.
The cha-cha-cha broadened Latin music's appeal. So did a new television show, I Love Lucy, starring Cuban singer and band leader Desi Arnaz and his wife Lucille Ball. Before its debut, the two had to convince network executives that the U.S. was ready to accept the premise, a cross-cultural marriage between a Cuban man and an American woman. Top ratings proved them right.
That means that I love you.
But the U.S.'s love affair in the 50s with all things Latin was not to last.
Several things happened to force the decline of the music, the culture, and the main thing was that Cuba was taken over by Fidel Castro, and the source of the music was cut off.
The doors to Cuba slammed shut. And they slammed shut psychologically and politically in the United States. Cuban music, Latin music, all of a sudden became the music of Castro and the Cuban Revolution and the communists.
It's been a hard day's night, and I've been working like a dog.
One of the worst things that could happen to the Latin music industry was the Beatles and the popularity of rock and roll in the mid-1960s, because really that captured the youth in the United States and in the Caribbean, for that matter.
I loved my rock and roll. I loved the Beatles. I was affected by all of that. The 60s, with the advent of rock and roll, R&B, changed the music scene even in East Harlem, because now you have a third generation that's coming up. They're coming up in the projects. Now this is my generation. And they're even much more English speaking than their predecessors.
At that time, you know, I could sit down and start listening to rock and roll, as good as it was, because I like the rhythm patterns, the drums especially, all the things they did. But you know, musically, we're talking about music, saxes, trumpets, this and that, and the brightness and so forth, and loud. And
Here are the Beatles.
I'm not talking about popularity and playing a concert with 60,000 people. You know, we never were able to do that.
Ironically, many early rock songs like Twist and Shout, covered by the Beatles, contain Latin influences in their chord progressions, bass lines, and rhythms. They were the works of songwriters and producers in New York in the Brill Building, located just 4 blocks away from the Palladium. Many were mambo nicks, like Doc Thomas and Mort Shulman, who wrote hits for the Drifters, including Save the Last Dance for Me.
But don't forget who's taking you home.
Thomas would call their work Jewish Latin.
So darling, save the last dance for me.
The influence of the Latin music on rock and roll was seminal. Seminal. Latin music was everywhere. It was universal for us growing up in the 50s. And naturally, when the musicians then turned to the recording industry and started writing songs, producing records, and so forth, people started making music that they'd heard all their lives, which became the Latin influence on rock and roll, and particularly on pop music.
Other classic songs have a direct lineage from Latin music, like Louie Louie. It was the Kingsmen's version of an R&B record, which in turn was based on a cha-cha-cha, written by Cuban René Toussaint. The riffs and rhythms of Latin music became part of the rock arsenal. 1, 2, cha-cha-cha. Compare the Beatles' Day Tripper. With this machito record from the 40s. Or Caramelos, a Cuban hit from 1960. With the Young Rascals' Good Lovin'.
1, 2, 3. Good love. Good love. Good love.
When the records came out with the Cuban or the Latin influence in them, the people had no idea what they were hearing. They'd never heard it before. They just loved it.
Latin sounds disappeared into the mix that created rock, but not for long. Far away from New York's Latin scene, a blues rock group would take a Latin sound international. In the psychedelic years of the 60s, the most influential rock venue in San Francisco was the Fillmore, run by former Mambo-Nick, Bill Graham. Graham ran his ballroom with a specific model in mind.
The Fillmore is, and then all the psychedelic ballrooms, because they all take their cue from the Fillmore. The Fillmore is Bill Graham's recreation of the Palladium circa 1953 in Manhattan. Crystal mirror ball turning with the lights going in all directions, and people perceiving that in the manner they hadn't in the Palladium. Bands playing and improvising and extending their sets. People dancing. I mean, you know, they were freak dancing, but they danced. Bill always wanted everybody who came to the Fillmore to dance.
He had also taken an interest in a young local guitarist, a kid he'd first met trying to sneak into the Fillmore. His name was Carlos Santana. Santana was born in Mexico, the son of a mariachi violin player. He too played violin himself as a boy, on the streets of Tijuana for change, as well as with his father in local bars.
It was one night where we were in the lowest part of Tijuana. You know, the smell like puke and vomit and piss in this whore joint. I mean, the cheapest whores. makes my stomach sick just to think about it. And we were playing this music, and I started crying, part crying and part anger, because I didn't want to be there. So my father said to me, "What's the matter?" And I says, "I don't want to play this music, and I don't want to be here. I know that you need me to help you to pay the rent, but I can't stand the smell, and I can't stand these people, and I can't stand this music. It's just, you know, it's making me sick to my stomach." So he said to me, "So what do you like? That American crap music, which is like Little Richard and Chuck Berry?" And I go, "Yeah." Now, Dad, look at where we are. Could that music be any worse than this?
Leaving violin behind, Santana picked up the guitar and felt an immediate bond. In the early 60s, Santana's family moved to a Latino neighborhood in San Francisco, the Mission District. By then, Carlos was already playing in bands and in love with the blues.
All of us are children of B.B. King, you know, just like B.B. King might be a child of T-Bone and other people. We're children of B.B. King.
Carlos's heroes were not Mongo Santa Maria or Tito Puente. He didn't know about those people. He was from Mexico. He was from California. He was a California dude.
The Santana band started out as a blues rock band, but evolved over time as members came and went and different influences entered the mix. Mike Carabello, a high school friend of Carlos, was the first to introduce the conga, having learned to play in drumming circles in the city.
And it was everybody's influence, like, okay, let's try a little bit of jazz this time. Let's do a little bit of Miles Davis this time. No, let's do a little bit of, let's go Borisawa thing this time. And let's do a little bit of a Beatles thing. And let's do a little bit of a Stones thing. And you mix that all together, and we still had our sound.
By 1969, the band had gelled, each member bringing something unique to the sound.
It's very important to understand the early Santana band was masterful creative collaboration. Carlos Santana was a great blues guitarist. Michael Carabella, the conga player, and Chapito Arias, the timbales player, they brought the Latin battery to the sound. Greg Raleigh was a huge contribution on organ. He was a great musician, and you know, ultimately he sang their hit records, but the organ was a big part of what they were doing. Michael Shreve was the right drummer to tie the whole package together. David Brown was African-American. He played fine bass and brought that sort of United Colors of Benetton thing to the scene that was so important to their message.
How it happened that there was a Puerto Rican in the band, a Mexican in the band, a Nicaraguan in the band, an Irish guy in the band, a Norwegian guy in the band, and a black guy in the band. We didn't do that on purpose, you know, but the music came out of that.
Visually, the band may have suggested world harmony, but coming from the Mission District gave it an edge.
It wasn't any hippie thing. It was like a street gang, but the weapon was music. You make a mistake, maybe like hippies would say, "Oh, you know, that's cool, man. You know, you're making a good effort, and you know, we'll try it again." It was more like, you know,
they weren't hippies. They walked on stage, and it was the Mission District, and you know, I was sure they had switchblades in their pockets.
Women started dancing differently to us than they were dancing to Jimi Hendrix and Cream. Grateful Dead, they were on Catch Your Butterflies. They were more like, you know, this is the gift from God, and sensual and Santana music can truly accentuate that without even trying.
As the band evolved toward a more Latin sound, it had a key supporter, giving it work in rehearsal space, even suggesting Latin songs to cover, like Evil Ways.
Bill Graham recognized it immediately. He understood better than the guys in the band what they were dealing with.
It gave him a chance to have his music reach the audience that he wanted it to reach.
Graham seized an opportunity for the band when the organizers of a rock festival near Woodstock, New York, found themselves in trouble.
Bill got very much involved because he was the only one in the country at that point who really knew how to put on a show for 100,000 people. And of course, Bill being who he was, he said, "You got to put my band on."
And he said to us, "There's going to be a festival. There's going to be the festival of festivals. And I want you to be in it. I know you haven't, your album's not out. People don't know you from anything, but they requested my help, and I told them the only way I help them is if they put Santana. What the hell is Santana?"
The band arrived at the Woodstock Festival on its second day, believing that they'd go on in 12 hours. But in the afternoon, they were suddenly rushed on stage. Assuming he'd have hours to come down, Carlos had taken LSD.
The guitar neck, it felt like a electric snake that wouldn't stand still. That's why I'm making ugly faces, trying to make the snake stand still so I can play it, And inwardly, I remember saying over and over, "God, I'll never do this again, ever, if you can just keep me in time and in tune."
The Santana Band's performance, with its innovative use of Afro-Cuban percussion, was one of the hits of the festival. But it became legendary when the Woodstock movie was released.
So when the movie came out, when Woodstock actually came out, we went to go to the show all together with everybody else. It wasn't a special screening or anything like that. In fact, we waited in line to buy our tickets. And I remember that the audience from the show before us were coming out and people were pointing at us. And then when we went in and we saw it, I know we were all blown away. I know I was completely, I didn't know whether to sink down in my seat or stand up and say, "That's me, that's me," like 5 or 6 of me up there on the screen.
I said, "Why did they put a camera on me that made me look like a bug?"
And that just broke us internationally. After that, it was all over.
After Woodstock, the band's Afro-Cuban blues hybrid became an integral part of the American soundscape. And Latinos in the U.S. had their first popular music superstar, Carlos Santana. From Cuba to Harlem to the stage at Woodstock, the journey of the music had only just begun.
Next time on Latin Music USA.
They had this raw power, and we will win. Whoa.
1970s New York. A musical revolution was underway.
It was the essence of the Latino soul.
Next time on Latin Music USA. For more about Latin Music USA, visit the series website at pbs.org. You can watch any part of the program that you've missed. Explore the origins, influences, and sounds of these rich musical traditions. And go behind the scenes to watch web-exclusive performances and interviews. Funding for Latin Music USA is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, This project is also supported in part by an award from the National Endowment for the Arts and by Latino Public Broadcasting and by viewers like you. Thank you.